Hello, and welcome. I'm Glimo. I'm the Keeper of the Chronicles for this Call of Cthulhu, Masks of Nyarlathotep campaign. This is a very long campaign, and some folks are intimidated to jump into a web series with this many episodes, so I'm creating recap videos to let people get in at the start of a season. Even if you have been watching us all along, this will probably help jog your memory about some of those early clues. I've pulled these together from my notes and tried to be as accurate as possible. But if anything I say here differs from the original video, the original stands as canon. This recap will cover Peru, New York, and London. Jesse, an archaeologist. Alistair, a museum curator. Seamus, a gadgeteer and explosives expert during the Great War. And Martin, a sharpshooter during the Great War turned mercenary, all applied to go on an archaeological dig down in Peru in 1920. Down there they met Alejandro, a day laborer who decided to join the expedition, and Jackson Elias, a noted author of modern-day cult practices, who was there to research a story about a suspected death cult operating in the Peruvian highlands, which the locals called the Carlisle. The leader of the dig was a man named Augustus Larkin. His second-in-command was Luis de Mendoza. It turned out that neither man was what he seemed, and the Carlisle were all too real, actual fat-sucking vampiric things who served some strange force in a pyramid up in the mountains. Larkin wasn't a Carlisle, but had some strange, dark force inside him that wanted the pyramid burst open. Luis de Mendoza was a Carlisle and hundreds of years old. The heroes tried to kill de Mendoza several times, but he kept coming back. The heroes eventually managed to kill Augustus Larkin and headed up to the pyramid. There they were able to repair the mystic seals around the pyramid, cutting the Carlisle off from their dark powers and killing them all. Jackson wrote about their adventures in his book, The Hungry Dead, although he kept the mythos angles to himself and presented the Carlisle as purely another death cult. At the start of 1925, the investigators were summoned to New York by Jackson. He said he had news about the Carlisle Expedition and needed their help in getting to the truth. Here's what public information was available about the Carlisle Expedition. The Carlisle Expedition sailed from New York in 1919, led by 24-year-old Roger Carlyle, a millionaire playboy who inexplicably turned from the life of a wastrel to fund and lead an archaeological expedition to Egypt. The principal members of the expedition were Sir Aubrey Penhew, age 54, titled, wealthy, and a noted Egyptologist. Hypatia Masters, age 27, a beautiful society girl, accomplished photographer, and linguist. Jack Brass Brady, age 36, mercenary soldier, weapons expert, and Carlyle's confidant and bodyguard. And Dr. Robert Huston, age 52, fashionable psychoanalyst and interpreter of dreams. The expedition members in America sailed to London to consult with Sir Aubrey Penhew on matters concerning ancient Egypt, who then joined the team. After a few weeks in England's capital, they departed for Egypt. Using Cairo as a base, the expedition performed several short desert excavations. An important find was rumored, but the expedition refused to comment to reporters. The principal members departed for Mombasa, Kenya, and quickly went inland to Nairobi. At the beginning of August, the expedition hired 20 bearers and headed into the wilderness, and then vanished. In March 1920, a Kikuyu tribesman told the authorities in Nairobi of a party of whites near the Mountain of the Black Wind, the local name for one of the high Kenyan peaks. Later, rumors intimated that the inhuman forces had destroyed the expedition. On hearing about the missing expedition, Roger Carlyle's sister Erica traveled to Africa and hired a search party. After 10 weeks of effort, Erica, with help from local authorities, found the remains of the expedition. The corpses were remarkably preserved. although what little was left appeared to have been pulled apart and torn to shreds by animals. A horrible death. The encampment was totally destroyed. Despite reports to the contrary, the remains were strewn about in the open, and no effort had been made to conceal them. Blame was quickly pinned on Nandi tribesmen. Some mention was made of a pagan cult powerful in the area, but the authorities scoffed at the idea and did not follow up such whispers, nor were such things mentioned in the subsequent trial. Fingers were pointed at some tribesmen, who were tried and hanged. The expedition members were declared dead, and the incident was forgotten. Alejandro, Jesse, Martin, Seamus, and Alistair arrived in New York on January 15, 1925. When they got to their friend Jackson's hotel room, they found him brutally murdered, and his killers escaping out the fire escape. Seamus and Alejandro pursued, and ended up bringing the fire escape crashing down on all of them. The police arrived, and the suspects, who were wearing strange headpieces with a red felt tongue-like streamer, were taken away. The police told the heroes that Jackson was the latest in a spate of ritual murders that had taken place over the last few years. The suspects were later transferred to a neighboring precinct and never heard from again. Our heroes retrieved several clues from Jackson's hotel room. A few days later, at the reading of Jackson's will, Jackson's lawyer, Carlton Ramsey, gave them a letter from Jackson. He worried that he might end up dead due to his current investigation, and charged the heroes with finding his murderer and uncovering the secrets of the Carlisle Expedition. He hinted that there were strange cults throughout the world involved in this. It appeared that the longer Jackson had investigated, the more tenuous his grip on reality became. Some of his notes were the ravings of a madman. Carlton informed our heroes that Jackson had left a small fortune in a trust to help the heroes investigate his death. Carlton would act as trustee and ensure the heroes had what they needed. From Jackson's publisher, Jonah Kensington, they received several sets of notes documenting irregularities in the Carlisle investigation. Jackson obviously felt that not all of the members of the expedition were killed. The heroes were quickly drawn to an African occult shop in Harlem called the Juju House. They made many visits to the shop, unfortunately attracting the attention of the Cult of the Bloody Tongue, the group who had murdered Jackson. The cult followed the heroes and murdered a number of the people that were trying to help the heroes with their investigation. The heroes eventually figured out that the cult held a ritual every month coinciding with the new moon. A few days before the ritual, the heroes again broke into the Juju House and found a secret ritual chamber in the basement. They found that one of the women who was giving them information had been murdered and raised as a zombie. They were forced to slay their one-time friend, as well as 3 other zombies who guarded the site. Also in the basement was a huge pit covered with a large stone slab. Alejandro was fascinated with the pit, but no one would help him take the cover off. On the night of the new moon, the heroes staked out the Juju House. Around midnight, they saw over 24 people go into the shop, all wearing ritual headdresses like Jackson's killers. After everyone was inside, they went into the Juju House and found the trapdoor open. Fearing the cult's numbers and occult powers, the group argued about what to do. Alejandro became overcome by madness and screamed that he had to know what was happening and ran down into the darkness. The heroes waited for him to come back, but he never did. In a moment of cold calculation, the heroes threw smoke bombs down into the tunnel, closed the trapdoor, and barricaded it. When they woke in the morning, the newspaper said there was an explosion and massive fire at the Juju House. The heroes were confused, since their smoke bombs were not explosive. But they were advised to leave New York at once before they got arrested. Just before they left for the docks, they were introduced to another of Jackson's associates, Jack Mackenzie, a reporter who agreed to accompany them. They set sail for London. The heroes arrived in London on February 2nd, 1925. They first met with Mickey Mahoney, owner of a tabloid called The Scoop, and an associate of Jackson's. From Mickey, they found out about a number of ritual murders that had hit London in recent years, being referred to as the Egyptian murders, because most of their victims were Egyptian nationals. Seeing similarities to the New York crimes, they contacted the police and found an ally in Inspector Craig, a retired detective who had seen things that man is not meant to see. He mentioned that there were rumors that the murders were connected with a cult called the Brotherhood of the Black Pharaoh. Police investigation into the group had dead-ended, as all the scholars they talked to said the group died out hundreds, if not thousands, of years ago. While waiting for leads to come in, the heroes investigated Myles Shipley, a local artist. Shipley painted strange and grotesque paintings and had gotten a reputation in occult circles, including the Order of the Golden Dawn. They arrived at Shipley's house and were greeted by Myles's elderly mother, Bertha. When introduced to Myles, Jack realized that Myles was afraid of his mother. The heroes found the paintings quite horrific, especially one depicting a black pharaoh. The heroes left the house and proceeded to stake the place out. 2 nights later, they saw Myles Shipley leave the house. Jack and Alistair stealthily pursued Myles, while Jesse, Seamus, and Martin broke into the house. Seamus broke into Myles's studio and went insane from looking at the pictures and ran out of the house. Meanwhile, Jack and Alistair found Myles talking to a prostitute, but failed to be stealthy, and Myles ran off. Hilarity ensued when Jack, Alistair, Jesse, and Martin all ended up finding Myles outside his house. Seamus eventually woke from his bout of madness and joined the heroes. Myles broke down and explained that his mother had been eaten by a shape-shifting snake man. The snake man injected Myles with drugs that made him see the mind-warping sights that he painted. He was also forced to bring back human victims to feed the thing. Myles led the heroes back into the house and down into the basement. He opened the door to a secret room which led to a laboratory. Bertha was in there, mixing up strange chemicals, and said,
"Myles, dear, did you bring me back anything?"
Martin took this moment to open fire with his .45, and Bertha screamed and turned back into her giant snake form. The rest of the party opened fire and put the creature down. At this point, Myles was catatonic, so they left him at a police station. After that, the heroes decided to investigate Empire Spices, a shop run by an Egyptian national, Zara Shafiq. Zara had been questioned by the police and told them that the Brotherhood of the Black Pharaoh was an old wives' tale. Jack, trying to ingratiate himself to Zara, told her that Seamus was a cop and thought he was being followed. The group also wanted to investigate the Blue Pyramid Club, a private club known to be frequented by Egyptian nationals. They thought if there was any chance that the Brotherhood was real, there would have to be a member inside. The group had figured out that Zara was a member of the club, so Jack asked her out on a date. The rest of the group waited in a bar down the street watching the club. Eventually they got tired of waiting and tried to get inside. The doorman told them that it was a private club, but for £10 sterling they could join. They paid up, gave fake names, and went inside. The rest of the heroes made discreet inquiries of some of the other patrons about the Egyptian murders and rumors of the Brotherhood of the Black Pharaoh, while also keeping an eye on Jack and Zara. A cocktail waitress slipped Jesse a note saying to meet her down the street at midnight. Around 11 p.m., Zara bid Jack goodnight and left the club. The group met up in the smoking lounge and compared notes, and then went down the street to meet the waitress. When the waitress saw Jack, she panicked. Jesse calmed her down, and she told them why she was so worried. The Brotherhood of the Black Pharaoh is real, and Zara is a high-ranking member. The Brotherhood had the waitress's boyfriend killed, and she wanted revenge. She told them that several of the patrons of the club are members of the Brotherhood, and not all of them are Egyptian. She said that once a month the Brotherhood members meet at the club and head out to an estate up north to perform their secret rituals. After she finished her story, the group was jumped by a dozen cultists. They captured the waitress, threw her into a van, and drove off. The heroes were unable to track the cultists. The next day, they also found out that the cult murdered Mickey Mahoney, owner of the Scoop. The heroes were at a loss for what to do next when they were approached by a psychic who said she had a message for them from an old friend. Alistair was intrigued and convinced the rest of the group to play along. The psychic channeled the ghost of Jackson Elias, who told them they had forgotten something. He reminded them of the business card they had for an Edward Gavigan, who now ran Aubrey Penhue's foundation. Jackson's spirit urged them to follow this lead. They made an appointment with Gavigan for the next day. Not knowing what else to do, Jack decided to go back to visit Zara to see if he could get more information. Unbeknownst to the rest of the party, while he was in with Zara, she cast a spell on him, getting him to tell her everything they'd uncovered so far. She then instructed him to tell the others that he was going to take Zara on another date, and that they should try to break into Empire Spices while Zara and Jack were out. The party took the bait and were ambushed by cultists and knocked out. Jack was magically incapacitated by Zara. The party woke in a dungeon cell. In the next cell was a haggard old man. He claimed to be Inspector Munden, the missing partner of Inspector Barrington. He claimed that he'd been captured months ago. He told them that Edward Gavigan is the head of the Brotherhood, and that the rituals all happen on Gavigan's island retreat, Miser House, up in Essex. He told them that Gavigan must die. It's the only way. He's too well connected to ever stand trial. At that point, cultists came in and took the screaming Munden away. Seamus still had his lockpicks and was able to get them out of the cell. They found out they were in the basement of the Blue Pyramid. They managed to escape and get back to their hotel. Jack and Alistair decided to keep their appointment with Gavigan the next day at his offices in the Penhue Foundation. Gavigan told them that he had met Jackson and given him some information about the Carlisle Expedition. Jack noticed that Gavigan was leaving some things unsaid and spoke disdainfully about Jackson. Gavigan refused to speak any more on the subject. Alistair let it slip that he was in possession of a mythos tome that they had retrieved in New York. Gavigan became quite animated and offered to buy the book on the spot. Alistair said that the book was back at his museum in New York and that he would set up a call, but he wasn't sure that Gavigan believed his lie. Gavigan then told them some very boring details about various digs in Egypt and took them on a tour of the gallery, and then sent them on their way. Meanwhile, the rest of the heroes were watching the Foundation. They saw a truck pull up and load crates onto it. They followed the truck to the Limehouse docks and the warehouse of Puneet Chowdhury. They watched the warehouse, and that night saw workers take the traits and move them onto a ship called the Ivory Wind. They tracked the captain to a bar, and Jesse befriended him over drinks and asked to see his ship. While looking around, he saw the crates were marked Ho Fang Import-Export, Shanghai, China. As they were returning to their hotel that night, they were attacked by this strange fog with creeping tentacles. They managed to break free, and Jesse spied Gavigan running around the corner. At this point, they decided it was time to get the hell out of London. They left a false trail saying they were going up to Lesser Adale, and then headed to Essex to find this Miser House. They eventually found Gavigan's island estate and took a boat out there. They were caught sneaking around the estate, but managed to convince the guards they were just lost drunken fishermen and were put off the island. The heroes came back that night, and while Jack watched the boat, the others snuck into the building through a coal chute. They got caught while exploring the basement, and in a caper worthy of Benny Hill, came out the coal chute, circled around, and climbed up some vines and snuck in the second-floor window. They found several guest rooms, each with white robes with inverted ox on them. They got caught a second time and were knocked out. The heroes woke up to the sound of gunfire outside and assumed that the cult must have found Jack. They found themselves in the cells of the basement of Miser House. With them was the waitress of the Blue Pyramid, as well as Louis Lepon. Louis was a Dutch national and a spy for the British government, with a cover as a journalist. He was also an associate of Inspector Craig. Craig didn't fully trust the heroes, so sent his friend Louis to do some digging. Louis started retracing the steps of Jackson Elias. He watched the Penhew Foundation and found out that Gavigan had a manufacturing warehouse up in Derby. He befriended a cult member, Daniel Savoy, who was having second thoughts. Daniel told Louis about a secret room in the basement of the Penhew Foundation. The two of them broke in, but Gavigan was waiting for them. He killed Daniel and magically subdued Louis, taking him back to Miser House for questioning, and to eventually become a sacrifice. Seamus still had his lockpicks hidden in his boot, and was able to break everyone out. While looking in one of the empty cells, he found Munden's wallet hidden in the dirt. Louis told the heroes that he'd been there several weeks, and neither he nor the waitress had seen Munden. The heroes didn't know what to believe, since they'd just met the man a few days earlier. They started questioning reality. The heroes ransacked Gavigan's secret lab and retrieved many mythos tomes, as well as their own belongings. They also found a half-written letter from Gavigan to someone called the Pale Viper, saying that Jack Brady was still alive and in Shanghai. They snuck out back to the boat and headed back to London to meet up with Craig. After telling Craig the story, they decided to gather more evidence on Gavigan. They broke into the Penhew Foundation and found the gun used to kill Daniel Savoy, as well as some strange mythos artifacts. They broke into Henson Manufacturing and found plans and items which seemed to be the guidance system for some strange new type of engine, which they destroyed. They had to kill 2 cultists at Henson Manufacturing in a gunfight. They returned to London and met back up with Craig. He told them that while this would help build a case, because of Gavigan's peerage it wouldn't be enough. It was decided that the heroes would lay low in Essex and then meet up with Inspector Barrington and witness the ritual. And assuming that something incriminating would happen, Barrington would make arrests. The day before the ritual, the heroes received a telegram from Craig, telling him that Gavigan claimed to have a witness who saw them kill the cultists in Derby. He told them to stay out of sight, but that now Barrington could only bring a couple of men, so breaking up the ritual was no longer an option. They would just observe, and if something happened, give testimony later. On the night of the ritual, the heroes met up with Barrington and 3 beak cops. They took a boat to Miser House. They broke into a storage shed and found cultist robes for everyone, and then followed a group of cultists to the ritual circle in the woods and tried to blend in. Towards midnight, a group of prisoners were chained to an obelisk at the center of the ritual circle. Gavigan and Shafiq arrived, and the ceremony started. At first, it seemed almost like a fraternity, with a drum circle and initiation hazing. But then, as the chanting went on, 4 giant foul beasts appeared. The party didn't know if they were birds or bats, the size of elephants with slippery scales instead of feathers. The beasts devoured the prisoners. The beasts all spoke with one voice, directly into the minds of everyone.
Welcome, my children. We come in the name of the Black Pharaoh. We speak for the Black Pharaoh. You honor us with your worship.
The heroes barely managed to keep control of themselves seeing these horrors, and decided now was the time to get the hell out of there. Just as they were about to leave, a robed figure raised a pistol and shot at Gavigan. He threw back his hood, and it was Jack Mackenzie. Bedlam reigned. The creatures beat their wings furiously and called out,
Heretics!
Gavigan ran off into the woods, as did several other cultists. The heroes ran back to their boat and headed back to shore. They got to the safe house, and Barrington went on to London to report to Craig. Shafiq told the police that the heroes all conspired to murder Gavigan, who was found stabbed to death. Jack was killed, and his body was being offered up as proof. Craig helped the investigators sneak onto a ship bound to Egypt, and promised to help try and clear their names. But in the meantime, they had to consider themselves wanted fugitives in England. With heavy hearts for yet another fallen comrade, they set sail for Egypt. Thank you for watching this recap, and enjoy Season 4 of Masks of Nyarlathotep. Please subscribe to our channel, and be sure to tick that bell to get notified when new videos come out.